Okay, ready or not, we're going to start. We're going to go live, huh? Okay. Let me just get my house in order here. All right. Okay. Now, let me get up the graphic that we are going to be discussing today, hopefully. And this is it. There you go. Genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. That's all we are discussing today. So do come in and join us and tell us how you take this type of news. All right, I'm just going through some messaging, making sure that everybody knows that we're online. Okay, so here we go. Here's the challenge to theists. Genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. That's a fact. So in terms of creator gods, in terms of the reason for the religion of the creator gods, game over. So this should this should be the very final hangout regarding the great debate, because the great debate is now concluded with game over. Excuse me. I just need to post this link in certain places so that I actually have the potential of having people join me, which would be nice. But in the meantime, I'm just sorting myself out here. Usually the beginning of my hangouts are always a bit of a mess because there's no organization. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to paste the invite to a couple of folks that I think might want to come into here. Okay. Thank you, watchers. There's 2 of you I see. Have you really got nothing better to do on a sunny morning like today? It is Tuesday. What a great day to have a sunny morning. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello.
Oh, it's good to see you.
Yes, you as well.
Welcome in. Have you been up long?
For a few hours.
Yeah.
On and off.
I was up at like 4:30.
I know.
Cause so are you. Wow.
Hey, Bunto.
Bunto, game over. What do you think?
You must be getting out of vacation fail.
I got an error 32 the first time I tried to come in here.
Oh, I got that last night.
Yeah, some people have been mentioning that they've been getting that.
Oh, it's Google fucking up.
Oh, I know.
I keep getting that.
Bunto?
He's let him join. Let him join in. There you guys. Hello, everybody.
Oh, you have such a nice smile.
I tell you what, I'm going to see if I can get some daylight.
Can you hear
Can
me?
I hear you? Speak.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm just going to get some daylight in here, okay? One moment.
I've been getting this authentication error.
Yeah, your audio is not great.
Okay, let me back out and back in.
It's scratchy.
Okay, how's it sounding now? Still fucked up?
No, it's good.
Okay.
Okay, so what I want to discuss today
Sure.
is the very first sentence of
The Bible.
no, it's stupid. The very first sentence on this graphic.
That is very true.
Genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. So we can just discount the rest of the text and go to the bottom. Game over. But if I could just continue. Without the Adam and Eve story, there would be no original sin. Without original sin, there would be no need for Jesus. Without Jesus, the Christian religion falls apart completely. The whole religion is based on and relies upon a story that could not be true.
True.
All evidence points to this fact. Game over. So, game over, Christians. Bye-bye. How can they defend themselves against that, by the way? Is it possible?
By sheer willful ignorance.
Well, I don't even think they can do that. They have to have a definite cognitive dissonance built into their psyche or something.
Yeah.
I can't understand how else it could be.
If all Christians look like, Raquel Welch, everybody would be fine with Christianity. But
no, because
reality is another thing.
If all Christians look like Raquel Welch, and Christianity had no problem with sex, then it would be great. Christianity would be fine. But because Christianity and sex don't really like each other, I think they missed the ball big time. I honestly believe
You're
that
a
if
Christian, right?
Catharism had prevailed over...
He's not a Christian, he's an ex-Jew.
Who?
You.
I mean,
No,
you're
I'm
a
not.
Christian sexually, right?
I'm not
What?
an ex-Jew. I never practiced Judaism.
But you were born a Jew.
No, I wasn't. I was born a little baby.
Okay, fine. Whatever. I'm sorry. I take back my
Are you
words.
circumcised?
That's
What's a
irrelevant.
personal question? That's for Lindsay to find
Okay,
out.
he's a Jew. All Jews are circumcised.
Christians are circumcised and so are Muslims.
Ha ha ha! There you go.
All
And
Abrahamics.
so a native Indian. So
They forced it on me, dude.
and they didn't force it on me. I was 8 days old and I was so defenseless. It took like 3 of them to hold me down.
Well, then what happened?
And then this really ugly, grumpy man in a black
Moshe?
hat. A black hat.
A
And,
Moshe?
and a black coat. He
A
took me
Moshe?
onto his lap, and he plied me with wine.
Oh, he did? I didn't
And
know
he
that.
sang, he hummed a tune.
He gave you a Hummer.
Gave me a...
Then he went ahead. They do that, dude. The Moshe uses his mouth.
the mohel.
Mohel or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's disgusting, isn't it? Bloody disgusting. And I wanted to stop. Immediately.
Okay, we won't talk about it. It's giving you
So
a
apparently there's
flashback.
a
Yeah,
country...
Lindsay doesn't like talking about G-O-D.
We're not
G-
talking about G-O-D. We're talking about
Y
C-O-C-K.
W-H-W.
No, I'm so on the bandwagon with not liking, like, I'm so tired of all this LGBT hate from Christians. Like, all last night,
Gay
that's
Don't
all I
hang out.
heard from every single Christian hangout I went to.
They're gay
Don't hang out
haters.
with Christians.
Homo haters.
What the fuck are you doing hanging out with Christians anyway? Lindsay,
Yeah?
answer the question, please.
What question?
What the fuck are you doing hanging out with
Why are you
Christians?
sucking on Kneeler's toes?
Who?
Kneelers.
Who's Kneeler?
Kneelers?
They're kneelers, man. Haven't you ever
Those
been
that
in a church?
kneel.
Four Eyes?
Oh, yes, Kneelers. Only Catholics mostly kneel.
Do they?
I don't know.
Kneelers.
I
Do
guess
you know what
Christians
Jews do
kneel.
once on one day a year on that Yom Kippur day? They throw themselves onto the ground at some point.
Yes, like the
Are
Muslim.
you going to welcome your two newbies?
Who we got here?
Yeah, you got two new people.
All right, let's see if I can identify them through their DNA.
Hello, DNA or Google profile?
Ah, yes, your DNA profile. Your DNA profile
Yeah,
says that
she-
you are Lulian.
Julian actually is written with an initial I.
Ah, because you are from Romania.
Do you know Cyprian?
You mean, I think, yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Dobra from Cluj.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's the only. There's 3 people in Romania that live in
Art?
Romania.
Isn't Art Czechoslovakian or Romanian? I don't know.
No, Benny. Benny's
Benny the
Romanian.
Ball.
There's 3 people in Romania.
A large population, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very large. Everybody knows each other.
Only 3 people in Romania?
Only
Sounds
3
like a
people.
Dalek.
It's a very small country.
We're talking about on Google Plus. So far, we only know 3 people that are from Romania.
Okay.
So far. But the discussion today, again, I'm going to bring it up again, is the first sentence in this graphic. The first sentence is, genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. So, with that information, is there anything that you'd like to add?
I guess I'll start that I don't think I ever believed in the literal Adam and Eve story, and I know that a lot of religious people are now going that it's just metaphorical, which I think creates more problems than solves for them, because if one part of the Bible is metaphorical, then that means that you have to start going down and asking, is this metaphorical? Is this metaphorical? And then you get to Jesus walking on water, was that just metaphorical, or Jesus resurrecting from the grave, was that metaphorical, or did he really resurrect from the grave? Was he like really, really, really sick one day and then got better, and that's what they meant by resurrecting from the grave? I mean, it just creates more problems than it solves, I think.
Okay, your audio is a little bit off, but we do understand you, and I think you're right. Okay. Except, when you say, did he really resurrect from the grave, or is it a metaphor or an allegory or a parable? You pretty much have to sort of qualify that sentence. In fact, you have to change that sentence, rephrase it. Jesus did not resurrect from the grave. Jesus did not even die and was even put in a grave because there was no Jesus.
There's distinct possibilities, Sid.
Well, I absolutely agree with that. I'm just saying for the Christians out there that believe Jesus was really their Lord and Savior, if you want to start saying parts of the Bible are metaphorical, you then have to start going down the line and justifying why this part of the Bible is not metaphorical. Why is this part? Why is Adam and Eve? And that's what I'm saying is that I don't believe there was ever a Jesus. I personally believe that there were that he's based on an amalgamation of different people that existed during the time, and that they just combined it together to make this super being. And like a lot of the stories aren't true, but they're like just that's what I personally believe. But yeah.
No, that's fine. But when you go back to the first sentence on this graphic, genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. Once the Adam and Eve story has been proven impossible, the rest of the continuation of that historical story falls apart. There's no, if Adam and Eve is not real, then neither is Moses, and neither is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and everybody in the biblical stories, including Jesus.
Well, and I absolutely agree with you. Unfortunately, a lot of religious people, as I said, fall back on other arguments for why that's not a problem, for why they can just change things and say, hey, what if this, what if that?
Right. Which is why they have to, they can't fall back on these reasons anymore, because the only reason that is important here is the fact that this Adam and Eve story in Genesis is impossible. And that's a fact. There's no dilly-dallying over that one. It's a fact. Take it and move on. Now, once that fact is digested by Christians, perhaps they'll lift their veil of cognitive dissonance and literally come back to reality and grasp reality for what it is.
Do you know why Christianity is so popular, Sid?
Tax
Do you know
breaks?
why?
Tax breaks.
Right, because there's distinct advantages to Christianity, and there's not like as many evident advantages to non-belief, other than truth. So if there's some way that the atheist could set up like some sort of reward, because the Christian reward is essentially, the social aspect. That's the best thing that atheists can do.
No, but we don't work on reward.
Well,
having knowledge is reward in itself.
Right.
Yeah.
To me.
Well, I'm not really against what you've suggested, but it does seem strange to reward somebody for being realistic, for knowing the truth.
Exactly.
That's right.
So
but listen to me. Don't all the Christians say, how can you live in a world of just molecules in motion and you're just protoplasm and there's no point to living? That's what they always go to,
I know, but all they got to do is look around them and they'll see how it's done.
Well, can you hear me better now or no?
Yeah,
much better. Yes, fantastic.
Okay. So one of the things that I hear a lot of religious people say is that why do you, or that God gives me purpose. I don't have
Right.
purpose if God doesn't exist. But then if your father says, I'm a doctor, I want you to be a doctor, you're like, no, 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 I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a computer programmer. So why is it okay for God to determine your purpose, but not your parents or somebody else?
Good question.
It's like basically, and the answer to this question, I'm sure you all have similar answers, is I give myself purpose.
Right.
My purpose is to play the video games I want to watch. Like right now, one of my purposes in life to see Star Wars Episode 8. I saw Episode 7. Now one of my purpose, one of the things I live for, and that might be pathetic to some people, but that's why I want to be alive. That's why I want to live my next day, because I have things I enjoy doing, and I want to continue doing those things.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, man. If you want atheism to really take off, there has to be like some sort of payoff for people, advantage.
Why?
Well, we can
Because that's what the
start
Christians
I
do.
disagree.
Okay, dude.
I disagree with that.
If you're a Christian, you get to go to heaven. You get to live forever. You get to be a bunch of people who love you automatically. I mean, that's just what sells for Christianity.
Well, in Christianity, though, you have all that self-hate.
Right. I mean, that's the underneath, but, you know, the selling of Christianity is like, God loves you. You know, you're going to be in heaven if you follow his rules. He's going to solve all your problems in life. You know, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but that's... Anyone who's, like, intelligent doesn't need that in life. Like, you don't need that to be happy. You don't need that reinsurance to be happy in life.
What do you need to be happy in life?
You just live life the way that you want.
You need to be accepted. I know that.
Yeah,
I mean, life
accepted
sucks when
in
you're not
society.
accepted.
So the timeline of your life is purely through individual choice.
What does that mean?
Well, you make your bed,
Timeline
you
of
lie
my
in it.
life.
Well, you make your bed and you lie in it, but
Yeah, you make
things
your bed, you lie
happen.
in it. You make decisions, you fail,
Yeah,
you win, whatever, but that's
yeah,
your
but
choice.
other people make decisions, and things happen in your life that is out of your control. But that happens too. But it depends how psychologically
Most
you
everything's
deal
out.
with it.
Just think of all the things you can actually control in your life, and you'll find there's very few.
Yeah. But one thing I will
Control
say
enough.
is, or one thing I will add to this is, personally, God was never for me, but I do think God helps people, and I do think there are people who, at first, for probably a long time, if they lose God, life would be harder for them. They wouldn't be able to cope initially. Now, I do think eventually, once they get past a lot of things, and it might take a while, then life might be better for them. But I do think there are some people who just aren't built the way I'm built, where God never did anything for me. God was never a security blanket for me. But I'm not saying the next person, I'm not going to say that God doesn't do something for you. There is the placebo effect,
Okay.
and I do believe in the placebo effect, and if you are not going to tell me how to live my life based on your religion, then I'm not going to attack you for believing in something, because it might help you, and I'm not here to strip somebody of their religion if it might harm them. And the point of it is we need to tell people, hey, here's another thing. This is over here, and this can be an alternative for religion. And come here if you want to, but only come here if you. But here's the alternative, and let people believe what they want, and just let them come over time, and the people that want to come over will.
Okay, thank you. Now, Julian, go ahead.
Hello, Romania.
I was turning off notifications from the other Hangout. When we clicked the Join Hangout button on the event page, Google created a Hangout URL, and some of us went there, and I indicated there this new URL. So, and from
On the
those
event
people,
page? Oh, thank you.
only
So yeah, go
anime.
ahead.
Yeah. So I think Lindsay said that intelligent people know something. So the more intelligent you are, maybe it's more intelligent to understand your surroundings, what is real and what is imagined. Because it seems that something, we have this such a function in our brains. We imagine, or we tend to imagine some things. And this is an entire topic in which I'm interested, because I do care about keeping this under control. I want to understand myself, what is real and what I imagine. For instance, when I fear something, and that fear is based on something that my nervous system is building up in a way that is related to reality, but does not build something real. Of course, it cannot be real if it's built by a brain. And the following question occurred to me when I heard her. What can we do? It's a very difficult question about this, because intelligence is not the norm. I felt this during my teenage, and as an adult person, I have been experiencing it a lot. Intelligence is not the norm. I mean, every person is intelligent, but to a significantly different degree.
Yeah. You want me to answer it, honey? Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Were you ever afraid of the dark? You know, when
Yes.
the lights went out, did you get scared? And now the lights go out, you're okay with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, that's what happens. Is the mind has an incredible ability to adapt to reality. You realize that there are no monsters out there under your bed or nothing. So eventually you grow up. It's called growing up, right? What happens is these people are afraid of death, right? They think that, oh my God, I'm going to die and everything's going to be over with, right?
Yes.
And then you realize, as you live on, it's like, hey, death is a part of the whole experience, right? I mean, life becomes painful in a way. There's like old age and so forth, but also you feel like, hey, I got to give somebody else a chance, right, to have the life experience. So death doesn't become that bad, right? So then you start looking at religion in a different light. You think of it like, hey, the reason they came up with this stuff because those people were so afraid of dying, right?
Yes.
That's how come they came up with the, heaven hell thing. And also they wanted like a judgment. Hey, if you do bad things, there's going to be accountability. When they really didn't see a lot of accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So, religion is like, what do you call it, conception. It covered a lot of bases of people come up with ideas to cover up, inadequacies in their own psyche. Came up with, gods and, and hell, heaven, hell, and, miracles and stuff ending up, right. But in reality, life is, much different. Anyone?
Well, you were bringing up you were bringing up that like religion gave you the like the promise of living forever, and the
Right.
ironic part is that religion is making this promise but has no way of actually fulfilling it, where science is actually trying to do it right now.
Truly.
It's the idea that if people realize that your best chance of living forever, now obviously 1,000 years ago this would not have been the case probably, but hey, maybe death wouldn't be a thing if the Dark Ages never happened, but that's another topic entirely. Right. But the idea of this is that we are getting closer and closer and closer to where death is not gonna be a thing anymore. We'll die when we're ready.
Right, our lifespans are longer, so forth. I agree.
Yeah, and I do think we're going to get to a point where life literally ends when you choose it to end. When you're like, I'm done. I I've lived the life I want to live. I've done the things I want to do. Now, can I go to this hospital and have them put me to sleep because now I'm done? That's what I think we're going to move towards in the future. That's a while away, probably after I'm dead, unfortunately. But hey, I think we are moving
Yeah,
towards that.
Okay.
But
how
I
about
can
this?
hope.
So hold on a sec. So you mean assisted suicide?
Right.
I mean,
euthanasia.
eventually, once we get to a point where lifespans are basically where you choose it, where you could live infinitely, where death is not a thing anymore, you would have to have assisted suicide because you can't have a population that just never dies. That just wouldn't work. But yet again, as I said, this is something that will eventually come up, and that's why I think we need to have the talk about, and not here, of course, but we need to have the talk about assisted suicide because eventually we're going to get to a point where it becomes a more important discussion. But as of right now, I was just bringing it up that I do eventually think we're going to get to a point where that's how people die, is by choice, not by bad health.
Now, I was just going to add really quick, how else can one explain that right to life fetish that the Christian right has? I mean, they are just so fearful of death, of the natural life processes, one being infanticide, right? People not wanting to have any sort of life. They're just, they got to have a person living no matter what, brain dead, the family can't support a kid, so they got to have that kid, It's like a fetish.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. Like, I really do not get the whole idea. I don't understand. I really don't understand their whole obsession with this whole idea, because
Like,
the idea
life
of it
itself is important, but the nature of the life isn't. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
sort of, okay, we
because
got
the
to have this
idea
person living.
well,
Yeah.
the idea of this is I'm going to die one day. I know this is going to happen, and that doesn't scare me. I don't get scared by the fact that I'm going to die. I do things before I die to enjoy and to have a good life. But if I'm in a hospital bed and a doctor says there's nothing we can do, you're going to die,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be fearing that. I'm going to be going, okay, it's my time. I've lived my life. I've done the things I want to do. And to me, that I don't have any fear about death. I don't want to die right now, but I don't fear it.
Yeah, well, let's say, like, as you age, the fear of death should lessen, appreciably.
Yep.
What do you think, Sid?
About the fear of death?
Well, I mean, about the Christian outlook on, like, right
Well,
to
how can you
life.
control the fear of death?
I gotta live forever, man. I gotta, be a Christian so I can live in heaven forever. Every baby has to be born, man, no matter what kind of situation it's going to be in.
But hold on a minute, hold on, whoa. Bunto.
What?
Look at the graphic. What does the first sentence say?
Oh, that shitty graphic you have?
Yes.
Look, dude, you've
Genetics
already run
has
it into the
proven.
ground. We already know this graphic. What you have to do is start explaining your position.
I just want to talk about the
listen, you hate Christianity, right? Why do you hate Christianity? Explain yourself.
No, this has got nothing to do with hating Christianity. This is to
Do
do
you
with...
hate Christianity, yes or no?
Sid, you're assuming that Bunto can actually read.
Let me finish,
That's
okay?
a good
Let me
assumption,
just
man.
present...
How many books have you written, dude?
Let me just present my quick... let me just do a quick presentation. This graphic... I don't want to talk about this graphic. I just want to talk about the very first sentence of this graphic.
Is my mic working?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Now the
mic's
show
working.
starts.
Yeah, I'd
Okay,
like to
so the
respond
very
to that
first sentence of this graphic says, genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. Okay, so this is what we are using as our premise.
That's
that
a fallacious statement.
Hold on a second.
All
Our
right.
premise for which there is no need to discuss, because it's true.
Okay, the first sentence is entirely fallacious, and people who are familiar with the basics of the philosophy of science would reject that statement, and here's why. Okay, I'm going to read to you from
Because there's so much
a letter.
proof for Jesus.
No.
Okay, hold on. Let me.
proof for creation.
I'll be brief.
Okay, first tell us who wrote the letter before you read it.
Okay, this is a letter written to Science magazine, which is a very prestigious science publication.
Yeah, who wrote it?
Charles Bennett wrote to the editor, and this is what he wrote. It was in 2008. He said the title of the May 6 News of the Week story, and the title was, "At Long Last, Gravity Probe B Satellite Proves Einstein Right," made me cringe. I find myself frequently repeating to students and the public that science doesn't prove theories. Scientific measurements can only disprove theories or be consistent with them. Any theory that is consistent with the measurements could be disproved by a future measurement. I would not have expected Science magazine of all places to say that a theory is proved. Now, the editor of Science
the scripture ever tested.
May I finish, please?
Let him finish.
Okay, I'm not done yet. Okay, I'd like to finish. I won't be long.
Go ahead.
The editor of Science magazine, Carl Norman, wrote back in the following, after he wrote that in. He said, "Bennett is completely correct. It's an important conceptual point, and we blew it." So the editor of Science magazine is acknowledging that nothing is ever actually proven in science. All conclusions in science are provisional.
Unlike Scripture, where everything is true.
Okay, well, first of all, Bunto, my point is this: to say that something is proven in science is fallacious.
It's a lot more
okay, Darwin.
was,
yeah, okay, Darwin. So you've got an issue with one word in there, but the whole sentence gives a context of what it's trying to say, irrespective whether you have an issue with the word proven. So you can remove the word. You can remove the word proven. It's giving a claim, and the claim is the Adam and Eve story is impossible,
right?
Because of genetics. That is the claim. Well, and
Okay,
all of the other words are just in there
really
to make the sentence. Hold on, Darwin. Hold on, Darwin. All of the other words are just in there just to give a flavour of the argument, for want of a better word. So you could go down the route of arguing every definitional little word that's in there, or you could actually address the claim, because it is a claim, and that's what people are here to discuss.
Yeah, the claim is genetics has proven something. Nothing is proven in science.
Yeah, but the word science does not appear. Show me where the word science appears.
Genetics would be a subdivision of science.
Stop focusing on the proven.
Genetics is a subdivision of mythology.
The bottom line here is your opening statement is fallacious, and people who are skeptics and even do not accept the biblical narrative would say that's impossible. Can I speak without being interrupted?
No, because we'd like to address your claim.
That's fine, but can I speak without being interrupted?
No, we heard your claim. It's fine.
No, you didn't. No, I didn't even finish. I was responding.
You're saying that genetics is a subset.
Hey, Bunto, man, if you're going to be a horse's ass, I won't. Excuse me again. Okay.
Okay, listen. Okay, we'll accept that we're completely wrong, Darwin. Now tell us, how can Adam and Eve be proven true?
How can it be proven?
Yeah, well, tell us how Adam and Eve is correct.
Well, with it in the question that you ask, in order for a question to be legitimate, that which you presume
a question is just a question. There's no fucking judge that legitimizes
when you ask me the question about proof for something, are you not presupposing, giving your worldview, that something can be proven?
So you're not answering the question by
how can Adam and Eve be true?
I cannot answer two people at the same time. Now, I answer Bunto.
It's not that hard
to address you, Sydney. So Bunto, does your question presuppose the possibility of proof given your worldview?
No, this is my question, simple on its face. How can Adam and Eve be true?
Okay. Does your worldview presuppose that...
No worldview. Explain to me in reality that we share how
you understand
your
How can you not answer his question?
Okay. This is like dealing with snarky adolescents. Okay.
Really? Well, guess what? 99.9% of all accredited universities must be headed by snarky adolescents because the Adam and Eve theory doesn't hold any water whatsoever.
Bunto,
And we feel that you're being rather adolescent, Darwin's, with the way that
I'll
you're
wait till
treating us.
everybody's done.
Just answer the question.
Bunto,
Bunto, ask him the question again, please.
Go ahead, Darwin. Just tell us how can Adam and Eve be true?
Your question is not a legitimate one, given your.
His question
It isn't to a Christian.
Okay,
That
I'll
tells
tell
you
you
that.
his question
I
is
rest
how
my case.
can Adam and
That
Eve
question
be
is not legitimate to a Christian.
If you interrupt me one more time, I'll just leave because I have better things to do than have
I
you
just want to say
snarky
something.
assholes
I'm not
interrupting me. Okay.
I'm not interrupting you. I'm just saying
No,
that.
I've been interrupted multiple times.
I'm just repeating the question. I'm not
This is
interrupting you.
typical of atheists on the internet. So I'll try
Okay, all right.
I know.
Duncan.
You really are meanies.
I'll try one more time. Okay, Bunto.
No.
When you ask me the question,
Dawkins.
can something be proven or shown to be true?
Dawkins,
That wasn't my
your
question.
worldview,
That wasn't my
your
question.
worldview, you cannot.
No, Dawkins delusion. Hello, are you a robot?
Okay, listen. Okay, you guys want to behave like snarky teenagers. I have better things.
Oh,
to do.
you're going to
This is his hangout. He can do whatever you want.
Yeah, just like, but you know,
Come on.
but Sid, DNA has been used to like settle like legal disputes, like with the Kennewick man, where the native tribe said the remains were somebody who was Indian, and the researcher who found the remains said no, this is some person who traveled the land's bred that's Asian. They took that to court, used DNA evidence, and it showed that this was a Native American. So, I mean, DNA does prove things, right? In reality, like, of course, Darwin's going to take it into some philosophical realm.
I know.
But, like, in reality...
Is there DNA
in your
evidence
worldview-
for Adam and Eve, though? I don't think so.
Oh, man. I mean, listen. Bunto's question was simple. What did you say? How can the Adam and
I
Eve
just
story be true? That's what you
how
said,
can
right?
it be true? You know,
Okay. And he went on to a worldview.
Just to tell everybody really quick.
Stop
when
that.
you ask a question to a person and when they attack the method, that's indicative that they have no basis of their own. When they attack the method, that shows you that they don't fucking have anything behind their point.
He had no intention of answering it. He wanted to go down a complete rabbit hole by starting to talk about individual definitions of individual little words and transfer the whole thing back onto us. And that's why everybody in here was just getting at him. Answer the question.
Answer the question. Okay, so basically, just for those who have just joined us, the presentation today is the first sentence in this graphic. Genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. As Heretic has pointed out, actually, you might as well just say genetics has proven Genesis. Genetics has proven Genesis to be impossible, for example, right? Heretic?
I would take, from Darwin's objection, I would take the word proven out. I would just say the Adam and Eve story is impossible. Genetics has shown this.
Genetics has shown the Adam and Eve story is impossible. All right, fair enough. Okay, anyway, that's our premise. That's our axiom. When we are discussing this, we're not discussing this with a view to listening to people who dispute it, because that's a waste of time. Simply no reason to tolerate that.
One thing that jumps to my mind about the construction of that first sentence, I mean, the word proven has like a practical applicability, that we can have a method in order to establish something is real. So that's nothing wrong with what I mean? When you use genetics has proven, there's a method that can demonstrate that the Adam and Eve story is impossible,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, not to quibble, Bunty, but I think we can talk. When we say proven, to me, it's with reasonable certainty that the evidence rules out the Adam and Eve story. That's what I take it as.
Right.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Okay, like this: a nuclear scientist can prove that leprechauns have no, factor in nuclear fusion. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, what is so sacred about this fairy tale? You know, sort of like, you know, puts a, what do you call it, a bias towards sentences like that. I mean, it's like, come on, there's no bias. We do have a method in order to prove what things are actual within our reality. You know,
Well,
that's what I look at it. You know.
Yeah, well, one thing I will say is he's technically true. Science doesn't prove anything. Science science disproves things, but it's a word game. It's basically going. Technically, science doesn't prove anything. It just eliminates possibilities until we get to one possibility. But when you have one possibility, and this possibility has no, basically it's so important in everything we do. For instance, evolution. If evolution was disproven tomorrow, it would do so much damage to what we know, to where it's reasonable to assume that it has been proven, even though that might not be the technical scientific term, and a doctorate in science might go, no, you don't want to use that word.
Don't you think that science? Don't you think that science? I mean, he's partly correct in that science really does try and disprove. It doesn't try and disprove its methods, but it tries to eliminate the impossible variables, those that don't. They are not part of the problem, for example.
Yeah, it's a process of elimination. It eliminates.
It's a process of elimination, exactly.
Yeah. It eliminates the bad ideas, so we're left with just the good, with the ideas that tend to work better than don't work, and then from there we can make guesses on what is probably true and what is probably not true.
Right, and we can use mathematics and we can use physics and chemistry and all that kind of stuff to actually record all this stuff, right?
So you can just reword that first sentence to be something to do with science disproving. That's all that you have to do, rather than proving something. It disproves that it's possible. So to me it's the same thing, because you just say a negative. You put a negative in to negate another negative. Rather than
genetics is genetics. There's no reason to say genetics is science, because genetics is so what?
You can say genetics has disproven that the Adam and Eve story.
It's like but it wasn't even a theory, dude. I mean, that's like raising that bullshit to some level of a theory.
It's saying Mormonism is theology.
Science has disproven that there can be two Homo sapiens at one time.
God, I mean, I hate that. A fucking fairy tale gets risen to the level of some theory.
Hey, Bantu, that's what's been annoying me more and more recently. The fidelity like believers have in these stories that are so baseless. That is becoming more annoying to me than anything else, right? You're right. It's a baseless story. It's
the Adam and Eve theory, right?
Yeah, the global. They're baseless. Their assertions, just folklore. There's nothing about them other than they've been modified from earlier non-factual stories.
I was starting to like that first sentence a lot more. I know, they're just proven, man.
Now, did you notice how entitled that gentleman felt? He felt that he was entitled to come forward and give an absolutely...
That's his job.
No, but that's not the intent of this hangout. The intent of this hangout is to take that first sentence as our axiom, as our premise to not be argued over or not to be discussed.
Apologetics is to give a reasoned defense for the belief in whatever it is, right? Apologetics, Christian. So that was his job as an apologist, to come in here and look for any crack to, what would you say, have an opening that, hey, there might be some possibility that this fairy tale is true.
No. The intention is for him to come in and say, oh, yeah, and just join in with the rest of us and welcome the next person who comes in. Hold on a second. Welcome the next person who comes in as an apologist and looks at that first sentence, and after talking and discussing, says, "Okay, yeah, all right." And then he gets added to the hangout, and then waits for the next person to come in, and we make friends that way.
Okay, let's do the proper scientific method, and
Mhm.
let's try and chop down this axiom. And if we can't, then we can say that it's right. What is the evidence base for that first sentence?
I'm just going to bring it up, all right?
Okay, the evidence for this. Okay, you have to know the background of the Adam and Eve story, right? Two people came together and created the population of the world, right? We have the means to devise, we can go back through our DNA and all the way to a common ancestry, right? With, we have what do you call it? An animal tree, right? A tree of life. Would you agree, heretic? Okay.
Absolutely. I'm just asking. Right. I mean, you're sounding like you're giving me a theoretical thing rather
Well, I'm
than.
trying to explain to you a method that I could use to disprove
Yeah.
the Adam and Eve theory hypothesis, right? That there's only two humans created at one time who created the whole population. Well, the mathematical probabilities, I think, sink that, first off, on its face. But also, since we have, the science of genetics and DNA, we can look back and see that there's no way that there was just two people. As to my understandings of evolution, there was like, at one point, I'm thinking from the God delusion, there was something called human that, there was other people that were close to human, and there was something called human in the history of this planet, and that's where humanity sprung forth from, Homo sapiens sapien. You guys get what I'm talking about? There's no two people theory that will ever hold water, in genetics. There's just the humanity coming, from a whole span of things that were human.
Yeah, so
So I mean, I've got a couple of arguments against it.
Okay.
And one is from interpretation of the Bible, and the other is from God killed everybody except for one family, which was Noah and his family later.
Right.
So it comes later. So I can actually forget the Adam and Eve story totally,
right,
if I wanted. But from the theological perspective, I would go back to Genesis 1 rather than looking at Genesis 2. And I would say on the fifth day, and God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, blah, blah, blah. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over all the creatures. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Now, he said, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. I do not accept that day 5 relates to Genesis 2 and Adam and Eve. I believe that he created a lot of mankind, male and female, if I was to believe the Bible and read it in that way. Not that I believe this stuff, I'm just saying this is how I would interpret it.
Yeah.
There were a lot there, of which, when you get to Genesis 2, Adam and Eve were just two of the people, and he chose these two, made them out of exactly the same thing that he made the others, and he put them in his garden. And these were the special two, because unless he had done that, there is no way that Cain, who had just killed his only sibling, Abel, he had killed Abel, and he was told by God, you are now being cast out, and he said, but what if I meet somebody? They'll kill me because I'm a murderer.
Right. So who are the other people?
So who the hell are the other people? They were already there. He then went off and married somebody.
Right.
And he had children. And Adam and Eve had not had children, any other children by then, according to this account. Now, any apologist could say, oh, no. They had lots and lots of children. It's just not in there. That's bull. Absolute bull.
All right.
It would have been mentioned.
That's called like the pre-Adamites, I believe.
Julian, you got something to say?
Well, I'm not interrupting, so heretic, if you.
No, he's done. Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done there, Julian. I will let anybody come back at me on that.
He said he has got something to say, so go ahead.
there is. It is very difficult to prove, to acknowledge that there is any godly creature. Moreover, that they have created anything, for instance, a human. But there is plenty of proof that man has created gods, not God.
Right.
And there is something in our nervous system, and I would like to understand what and how it functions, that imagines huge entities that we cannot see, but whose goal is to hurt and kill people.
This deity.
Beg your pardon?
The deity, whose goal is to kill people.
This entity, you can call it deity. Maybe it is correct to call it deity. Okay. People keep imagining forces, negative forces that try to harm them. That's why we have those groups of people who talk about what do they call them?
Paranormal.
Paranormal forces, and there are no such forces.
That's true.
That's why there's so much. People imagine so many ugly things, and we can do this scientifically. Actually, I've begun to, because there are, for instance, images, in Egypt of creatures that do not exist, that are mixed in Greece too, that are a mix of beings, and one of these beings can be human. And another thing that I don't like, it seems that we cannot help it, but I don't like it because it has so bad consequences, is that we try to see anthropomorphic things, traits, and so on, where they are not.
Yeah.
A dog has nothing human. A cloud has nothing human. There's nothing in space that is human.
Mm-hmm.
But we imagine a God that sits on a throne and is in man's image. So the correct expression is in my image, in man's image, not in God's image.
Right.
And
that's the Abrahamic viewpoint.
I will listen to you immediately. I will finish. So we can continue the discussion focusing on different aspects and data. Of course, I cannot say. I mean, such a statement as this one. So any words that can be said by a human being, for instance, by myself, in 5 minutes, like now, do not represent something complete or final. So, of course, I am learning and I am listening.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
I was just going to say that, on the face, Christianity is not a bad thing, because it does lend itself to scrutiny. You can deconstruct Christianity and see its roots in, the Abrahamic religions. How a lot of the early Bible is based in polytheism, that we can see the traces of it, as they arrived at this entity called Yahweh. So yeah, I mean, in a way, it's not bad, deconstructing religion and seeing how it came about. That's just, my opinion.
You know what I think? I think that the deity side of things has an evolution in itself.
Yeah.
It started with many, and it ended up as one.
Right. Polytheism went to monotheism.
Yeah. So there's a timeline. There's a history of the one deity to start off with, and if there's a history of how how many deities became one, you don't need genetics to disprove the Adam and Eve story. So they're from two different directions. It is disproven.
Right. That's a heretic's position that there's two creation stories in there at the beginning of Genesis.
I
can they be
completely
two?
agree with you. I completely agree with you. I think it is an evolution thing. I mean, if you look at the Greek and the Roman gods and whatever, and how they used to live on a mountain, and they would be involved all the time, and they would take human wives and whatever, or impregnate them, and this, that, and the other, and produce their own offspring, and blah blah blah, and then it leads to much less of linking in with human beings to just being more benign,
Moral gods.
more gods, god of the moon, god of the sun, god of this, god of that.
Well, I mean, to me,
god of the earth, and
their gods were fantastical gods, but the Abrahamic gods were moral gods. Supposed to be law-giving gods, how to act. And Hercules wasn't a god like that. He was just, power god. Thor wasn't that god. He was just, lightning god. It was like an advancement. There was an evolution there.
That's so true. Exactly. Yes.
They had different gods for different aspects, though, as well. So I mean, again, it comes back to exactly what Sid said. It's the evolution of gods as created by humans. And the evolution is just, you can just see through it. And you can actually see it in the Abrahamic gods. You see Yahweh in the Old Testament, pretty nasty, pretty vengeful, jealous, this, that, and the other. Really not very nice, genocidal, killing everybody off. Then a human being, Abraham, has to teach him about morals in relation to Sodom and Gomorrah. What if there are 50 people there that are innocent? Are you going to still kill all of them? What if there are 10? What if there are 1? Blah, blah, blah. He had to teach this God morals. Then comes Jesus with this all-loving, turn-the-other-cheek God. However, he couldn't ignore the previous God. He wasn't allowed to. So that again looks like there's possibly more than one. One's a father and one's a son, exactly like the Jesus fable in itself. Then you've got Islam. Islam to me is the brother of the Jesus God, who looked at what the Christians and the Catholics did and said, you are bastardizing all of this stuff. You are causing so many problems. I'm going to send some other people down there who have my word, who will fight you to the death, and they will take you over. And then there will be peace. But in the meantime, while they're doing all of this, it's going to be hell on earth. I can see that evolution, just as you said, Sid, and just as you said, Bunto. But I look at it on looking at all of them and going, how is that one then linked to the next one, then linked to the next one? What could be the reasons? Now, of course, I've got no basis for any of this. There's no evidence for it. I'm just looking at stories. I'm just looking at stories.
The fact that the ancient civilizations had many, many gods, and the lucky fact that once one sort of civilization conquered another one, they usually just absorb the gods and sort of expel the god, that person's gods. That's why there were so many gods. But over time, as one was debunked, let's say, and it just became a sort of a tradition, cultural tradition. It dropped off the truth bandwagon. It just became folklore, let's say. They just kept on dropping. Now, when it came to the monotheist God, I think that was forced upon us.
Totally. In the Western world, yes.
In the Western world, definitely.
Whereas in India, they still have millions of gods, and it's literally millions.
Every town has their own god.
Yeah, every family has their own god.
That's how much we do not know. That's how much I know nothing about Southeast Asian culture.
They beat the shit out of us in Vietnam.
India?
No, Southeast Asia, man. I'm thinking
Okay, what
Vietnam.
would you call Indian then?
India is a subcontinent.
All right, Indian culture.
Okay, yes.
Well, there were millions of religions there, somebody said.
Millions of gods. Millions
Oh,
of
millions of
gods.
gods.
The religion is Hindu or Sikh, or
Muslim.
in some cases Muslim, and you've got your others. You've got your Jains. You've got your this, that, and the other. There are a number of religions. There are a number of religions there, but these religions, other than the Muslims, have a large number of gods, each of them, but particularly the Hindus.
They have a large number of gods?
Millions.
The
Millions
Hindus
of
have
gods.
well, hold on a second. Do the Hindus have more gods than people?
No, probably because there's a lot of Hindus, but I know like almost every town has their own god.
There's 1.2 billion people in India,
Right.
but there are millions of gods. There's just
Okay.
shed loads of them.
So each family has a god, it seems.
Essentially, yeah.
Fair
They
enough.
choose their god and live their life by whatever it is they choose to.
Now, who do they have
put
to
the
blow up
actions.
to proclaim that their religion is the one true religion?
They just hack you to bits there.
No,
I'm
India.
not sure they look at it that
No,
way.
there's some.
Technically,
Sorry.
go on, Lindsay.
There's
All
some
yours.
main gods, and then there's demigods. Like, well, I'll use this as an example.
Like the Minor League of Gods.
Like Buddha is a god in Hinduism. He's a demigod. Why do you think the Dalai Lama fled to India when he was leaving Tibet?
Well, we
He
can
fled to-
definitely discount the demigods because they're just people, right?
Well, they're still considered divine in a degree.
But to what degree are they divine, and why does it
Well,
matter?
demigods are half gods. They're usually gods that were they usually have a god parent and a human parent.
Like Jesus.
Or Hercules is like the big one.
Well,
people
I mean,
bring
if
up.
Jesus had a god parent and a divine parent, then he's a demigod.
But in Christianity, they say he's 100% human and 100%
No,
God.
yeah, but hold on a second. You can't go and bring up a definition and say the definition. This is the definition of X, but when you use it, when you see
Christianity, dude.
X over there, you can't use that definition.
Okay, Sid, I'm
No, I'm not
looking.
saying
I'm
you're
looking
wrong.
at.
I'm saying what Christians would say to you if you were to say that Jesus is a demigod. They would say, no, you're wrong.
Okay. All right, heretic.
Yeah, I just looked it up on Wikipedia.
You could say Christ was pre-crucifixion. Christ was a demigod, but after crucifixion, he definitely was a god.
You're getting into the docetic side of heresy and Gnosticism there.
Tell us what you got there.
Yeah, on Wikipedia, I just put up Indian gods, and I've come through to Wikipedia Hindu deities, and it just says the Hindu deity concept varies from a personal god, as in yoga school of Hindu philosophy, to 33 Vedic deities, whatever Vedic is, to hundreds of Puranic deities, to millions of deities in Tantra traditions of Hinduism. So you've got major deities like Vishnu, Sri, Shiva, Parvati, Brahma, Saraswati, and then you've got lots of others. And I think Lindsay was sort of half right with the demigods thing. You've got concepts such as Harihara, half Shiva and half Vishnu, Ardhanarishvara, half Shiva, half Parvati. So I mean, they evolve, just like you said, Sid. There's an evolution here around changing over time the deity so that it takes on some of the characteristics of a different deity and it brings them together, and possibly that comes from marriage and two different families coming together and starting to share their traditions and whatever. and it develops, and everybody's deity just gets passed down in the line of their family, leading to these millions of them. But clearly there are millions of them, and there's no indication whatsoever that any of these things are right, but it's clear that a lot of people live their lives by it.
How do you live a life by a myth?
Let's ask Joel Osteen that question.
Well, he doesn't live. He runs a business by that myth. He doesn't live a life of that myth. That's not the right person to ask.
Hey, man, that's a good. Give me a choice. I'll live that business.
How about Christian Hillbilly? How does he live their life?
He likes. It's like, why does a guy do pro wrestling? Because they like the action. I mean, it's like a pro wrestling. So
Christian Hillbilly treats his religion like his hobby, like his passion.
I really can't speak his mind, but I mean, to me, it's like, you know, he's good at what he does, so he does it.
I'm not sure that Christian Hillbilly is a good example. I'm not sure that any born again, passionate born again Christian who has this obsession with it is a good example.
I think the Catholics are the best.
I come to Darwin's Deity and to Matt Bell and look at them and go, how can you describe yourselves as Christian with the way that you actually conduct yourself?
Well, what did Nietzsche say? The last true Christian died on the cross. I mean, there's no such thing as, you know, the ideal Christian.
But then again, you talk about Abrahamic faiths, and I include the Mormon faith or the Mormon religion to be part of the Abrahamic faith as well.
Sure.
An Abrahamic faith. In fact, one that is just as unbelievable to be fact as any of this pre-scriptures, the sort of holy scriptures are believable.
Sure.
One's a story, the other's a story. You know, it's great. It's great literature in a certain sense, but literature it is.
I can't disagree with you, Sid.
I know.
Literature it is. You just killed the hangout. Literature it is.
Sorry.
But you got to come to terms with your Christ hate, Sid. I mean, why do you hate Christ?
Where is it written, or where have I said that I hate Christ?
Well, you're always picking on Christianity, so obviously you must hate Christ. You're not a Christian, so, you know, if you doubt Christ, you might hate it.
He picks on all religions equally. All religions equally.
But in the Bible, it says if you're not for them, you're against him. So.
Well, if you are an atheist, you hate God. That is the only reason you're an atheist.
Right.
You're not an atheist. You cannot. You cannot.
Because atheism is hatred.
Is it possible?
It's hatred to the Christian God, not any other God.
Hatred of God, because God is of something unrelated to God that's happened in a traumatic event in the past. You know what? It's all projection.
Can you hate something that doesn't exist?
Well, it actually kind of bugs me because, like, the movie God's Not Dead, at the very end of that movie, sorry, spoiler alert, I'm sure none of you care, at the very end of that movie, you find out the main character literally is mad at God, believes in God, and that's why he lives his life, the villain of the movie. And so he was not an atheist in the entire movie, and he's your atheist villain.
How about the second movie?
I haven't seen it. My dad did, and I told my dad part of the movie, and my dad's like, I don't remember that.
Okay, I'd like the spoiler alert in that one.
Go for it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to watch that shite.
I'm not going to watch it.
No, I'm not going to watch it.
I'm going to watch Atheist. I'm going to watch Atheist tear it down like I did the first one.
Let me see. I think the only religious movie that I ever really liked was Jesus Christ Superstar. That movie rocked.
You know, the one I
Life
liked,
of
that was
Brian
not
wasn't
a
bad.
movie, that was
Life
more
of
of a
Brian was-
musical. You know which one I really liked? It was called The Cross and the Blade, I think it was. Or The Blade and the Cross.
Blade. I was thinking The Last Temptation of Christ wasn't that bad.
No. Hold on. I'll get it.
I
really
enjoyed
like
the
the
I
cartoon.
enjoyed
The Prince of Egypt.
That's a Christian movie?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I also
It's
enjoyed
about
the Prince
Noah's
of
story.
Cobra.
Not Noah. Moses.
Moses.
Yeah, Moses.
Oi, shut up. I enjoyed The Passion of the Christ.
I haven't
Oh my
seen that
God,
one.
you watched that movie? That's like a freaking
Oh,
snuff
yeah.
film.
I know.
I have never seen it.
I know. It really, really is. I mean, it's very strongly done. And I also enjoyed Noah, the recent one,
Oh, yeah.
with Mel Gibson.
The one that
Not
all the complained about.
That was
Loads of
actually a good
people-
movie.
It was a great movie. With take away the theological crap that's within it and just watch it as a mythological type of tale, and just enjoy it. And I thought it was great. I thought the acting was brilliant. I thought the way that they did it was excellent. And same with Passion of the Christ. I thought the acting in that
I would
was
never
super.
watch that movie. It's a terrible movie.
I wouldn't watch it either.
Yeah, but the
How
Noah's
do you
Ark
know
movie,
it's a terrible movie if you haven't watched it?
Because they had seen it. They beat the crap out of a dude and kill him in a terrible way. Who wants to see
They
that?
take 90 minutes to kill and stab and lash and gouge and skin and stab and...
And it's all fake, just to add on top of it, right?
Well,
anyway, this
I
is the
mean,
movie I'm
is
talking
it?
about. The Cross on the Switchblade. That was the best religious movie I've seen.
Switchblade. Oh, is that the one where the guy repents to Christ?
No, it doesn't. I don't think they repent to Christ. I think they just accept Christ.
Well, you know what I mean. That's what I thought that one. That's an old movie.
Yeah, it's got Pat Boone and Eric Estrada in.
Pat Boone in it. Holy shit.
1970.
No, I haven't seen that one yet, Sid.
Crusading minister gets involved in the lives of members of a New York street gang.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of those 1970s movies of the street gangs all coming together. What was that called when they were all
The Warriors.
The Warriors.
Oh, I love
the
that
Warriors?
movie.
And then
It's
there was
Cross on the
another one.
Switchblade on YouTube. Let me see. I ain't gonna pay to see that piece of shit movie. Yeah, it's on there. Free.
And you probably won't even watch it when it's free,
I'll watch
will you?
10 minutes of it just to see how fucking shitty it gets.
No, you have to watch the whole thing. It's like reading the Bible. You have to read it from beginning to end.
No way.
This movie is one of those movies. It's a Christian movie.
Is there a Muslim movie? Hey, the real Lindsay showed up.
Lindsay, how many of them are you? How many of you are you?
Is there a Muslim movie or they don't allow it yet?
There is a Muslim movie. It's called The Messenger, and it's in Arabic.
I'm gonna get going. I had fun here.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Well,
Nice
thank you
to
for
meet you.
having me.
Nice to meet you. Lindsay was a Trinity. Now she's just a duet.
Right.
What? Oh, yes.
Tell us
You
about
were-
that.
You were triune, Lindsay. Oh, there you
It's
go.
because my browser crashed, and then I tried to join, and my browser crashed again.
So are
Fucking
Muslim movies
Chromebooks.
worth the crap? Is it worth seeing a Muslim movie?
Well, it's 3 hours long, and it's
Oh,
about the Muhammad. It's about Muhammad. And
No,
then there's
that's-
an animated version of
I
it.
don't want to go to religion. I actually want to step away from religion.
Okay.
Okay, and concentrate on
Not politics.
concentrate on the first sentence of the graphic.
Oh, God. I already gave my 2 cents.
I know, but when we say genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible, let's practice what we preach.
I just explained how that story cannot possibly.
It can't be true. Then why do we talk about? Why are we talking Bible stories?
But I explained that there was a different option to it.
Theology.
Adam and Eve were not first. They were not first.
How did you explain that wasn't true?
Because it comes from the premise that Adam and Eve were the first and the only two, and that's a presupposition based on an interpretation. You can interpret the Bible completely differently, in that at day 5, God said, let there be man and woman and blah blah blah. I explained it all before, and he put lots of men and women on earth. There is no indication that Adam and Eve in Genesis 2 were the first ones of that, and the way that I could read it is that Adam and Eve were just two of them amongst millions of people that were put on the earth and created by God, but they were the chosen ones that were in the Garden of Eden, and they were given this exalted position, which they then screwed up, and it caused problems for absolutely everybody because of it, according to the story. And as a consequence, Adam and Eve were not the original, not the originals. It's just an interpretation. And then the next bit, there was one other bit out there.
Wait a minute.
There was one other bit.
I'm going to interject. As long as Sydney lets me. I think this is his room, isn't it?
Yeah. He paid for it.
Well, wait a minute. If there were other people, the descendants of those other people would not have inherited the original sin of Adam and Eve.
Why?
Well, because they weren't a part of the fall.
Yeah.
And then also think outbound, they all got wiped out in the flood. So what the hell?
Yeah, they all got wiped out in the flood. So it makes no difference. To me, the whole thing makes no difference.
But it does, because if Noah was a descendant of Adam and Eve, then.
So yeah, so the corruption story still carries.
Yeah, but I mean, you're going back to starting again with a very small number of people, which was 8, of which Noah was the descendant of Adam and Eve.
And the fall gene is dominant, so that's why it
yeah. Fall
why?
Gene
Where does this come in? Where does this come in? Because I've not read that anywhere in the Bible. No, hold on, Outland. You made a claim that it's actually a fall gene rather than God then said.
No, I said that. I was joking around, Eric.
But it's true. I mean, he has a point.
Hernando. Oh, hold on, Hernando. Outbound was talking. He was saying the other people could not have had this thing. Who's to say God did not do it so that, right, Adam and Eve have done this, so all of you've all got this thing, all of these millions, whatever. I mean, there's nothing in the Bible that says only.
There's nothing in the Bible that says what you just described.
No, exactly. Either of us we're both coming from our own interpretation. That's all I'm saying. And therefore, there are various other options that can negate.
Doesn't it specifically say that? Doesn't it specifically say that the curse was on those two and their kin, though? I mean, I don't remember the verses exactly,
but he said the snake, that you shall crawl on your belly, and the woman shall always have pain in childbirth, so forth.
Yeah, any curse in the curse.
Meaning mankind.
The curse goes upon those two and their kin.
The thing is that.
What does their kin mean? Are you talking their children or their kind? Their kin being mankind.
Well, now we need to look up the original translation. The original. I mean, if we're really going to get that specific about it, we can't go by kin because that's an English word. We'd have to go to I don't know what Genesis was written in, Hebrew or Greek or whatever.
Okay, so why would we learn Hebrew?
So that you can, because you're picking apart the semantics of the word kin. So we can't use the English translation to decide what the original text was intending to say. We'd have to go back to the original text, find out what word they used, what language it is, what that meant in
Yeah,
that language.
but outbound, that's kind of crazy. I mean, people translate things, right? Obviously, people have put the time in to translate it, and they find a word with a similar meaning for whatever it was in Hebrew. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
it's similar enough, right?
no.
I mean,
I can't
no?
believe you're saying that. No, I mean,
I mean,
it's like when the Bible uses the word love. There's a number of texts that were written in original Greek, and the Greek have multiple words for different kinds of love. They don't have one word that encompasses all kinds of love. So there's a more specific meaning to the text in that situation.
but then the implication
can't-
is you would know, you have a better use. It's up to you. It's incumbent upon you to say why the usage is wrong. Then, right? Right?
I'm not saying the usage is wrong. I'm just saying if we're trying to decipher whether God was saying that it was all the people or if it was just Adam and Eve and their descendants, we'd have to look at the original text to see what word was used and to find out how that word is applied.
That presupposes that the people who did take the time to translate it, translated it wrong. Though that's the kind of
No, it doesn't presuppose that they translated it wrong. It doesn't presuppose anything. It just takes into account the fact that we know that some English words are vague and some Greek and Hebrew words are more specific. And when you translate from a specific term to a vague term, because we don't have specific terms, we don't have terms that are equivalent.
I don't buy that whole premise. But then it's incumbent upon you to say.
Then you're uneducated about language and semantics and general.
Well, then it's incumbent upon you to say why the translators are wrong. Then
I just told you.
Outbound. I'm looking at Genesis 2 right at the moment, and I can't find your bit where you're saying
I wasn't sure that it was in
that this is anything to do with just Adam and Eve's children, rather than an indication that it's for everybody.
What was the part where Bunto? Weren't you mentioning a part? Is it the same part?
Yes, that's when, after the apple is eaten, he goes down and, chews out Eve, chews out Adam, and then chews out the snake, right? He says, your head is going to be on the ground.
You know specifically what part of the Bible that is?
I know it's in the first chapter, ain't it? Okay, it's in the second chapter? In the second chapter, yes, second chapter. Okay, this is the beauty of Scripture, right? It's so testable. Right? we can readily test it for its validity.
To clarify, Bunto, we don't know it was an apple, and
yeah, we don't know it was an apple. We don't know if Eve was really a woman, do we? Could have been Steve.
The Christian Bible.
Maybe she was a tranny.
No wonder we're fucked.
Nothing wrong with trannies.
A complex work of many people.
Maybe Adam wanted a tranny.
This script is not coherent.
Maybe trannies are the real original women.
Okay, what did you say, Julian?
The Bible is a long, complex work written and edited by many people. And it's not coherent. Why would we try to imagine a coherent Bible?
It's unfair to the authors, putting it through this strainer, because they just were really writing stories and, kind of beautiful stories. There's a lot of poetry in the Bible, but to hold it to this scientific scrutiny or any scrutiny whatsoever is, a little unfair. I offer as mere observation.
Well, I personally don't understand how anyone can believe the Bible if they haven't had any kind of basis for believing that it could be true in the first place.
Well, that's the beauty of people that actually take pains at deconstructing. They're looking at it without bias, while the believer has a preference to believe that there's some sort of magic or God to it, so they are biased to begin with.
Well, I mean, I could understand if you believe some of the claims in the Bible because you've had some sort of a spiritual experience in your life. Because that's what has happened to me, and that's why I believe some of the things in the Bible. I don't believe everything is in the Bible. There's so many things in the Bible that I just cannot accept, like a global flood, for example.
Right.
Okay, I just read the part where what you were talking about where he cursed them all, and in there it doesn't mention as who was it that said that?
The gene.
Her Heretic said that it doesn't mention cursing their kin or their descendants, and it doesn't. So, but, I mean, there's really nothing in there that I can see that's even a signal of original sin. So maybe we're looking at the wrong book. Is there another book where it says that Jesus is like where do they start talking about being born with sin and the fact that Adam and Eve had anything to
Well,
do with that?
the original sin comes from not being able to maintain the presence of God. You see, the reason they were in the garden is they could be up, with God and fellowship with God. But after they ate that apple and were as wise as God, then they became unclean and they couldn't be in the garden. So that is the original sin.
Yeah,
They cannot be in the presence of God because they're unclean. That's why
No,
you have to believe in Jesus.
The original sin is the part where it starts about women having tough childbirth and
Oh, yeah.
man will have to that
But
whole.
those are the effects of original sin. Original sin is not being able to be in the presence of God because you're unclean.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's around that portion where it starts talking about like why snakes don't have legs, and then why women have tough child that whole thing. It's
Earlier, you guys were speaking about how Adam and Eve's problem could be passed on to the children and affect the entire human race when there's likely other people that existed, and that you could back that up with some things.
Yeah, but
in the
yeah, but
Bible
I
that don't
just
make sense.
I mean, if we're going to go by the English translation, I just read it, and I mean, this is the New International Version. It says that God banished. I mean, the references are all to Adam and Eve specifically, and the serpent specifically. It doesn't say men, or it just says him or Adam, or it specifically references just those two.
What I was about to say was that when Adam and Eve left, and then their children, then they started to have children. Those children interbreeded with the other humans that were already there. Therefore, the genetics were intermingled. Therefore, whatever problem Adam and Eve had was passed on throughout the entirety of the human race over time.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that. So how, why
Well,
would we?
it doesn't say a lot of things. It does say a lot of things, like how.
So then why would we assume it?
How in the world you have to assume certain things in order for it to make sense?
No, I don't.
Well,
Maybe you do.
There's an easy test.
I don't have to assume
Okay,
anything.
for example, Adam and Eve, or Adam was told not to eat the fruit unless he had died. How in the world would Adam know what death was unless it was explained to him or unless he's seen it?
Right, and then the subsequent offspring died, so that shows you that they had the fall gene,
So there's a lot of things that don't make sense. If you just look at, read the story. If you just read the story, you have to insert certain understandings. You have to infer certain understandings in order for it to make sense.
This is where we get into what Heretic was saying, where there's multiple things I could infer. Like you're just making up bullshit that you want and sticking it in there.
So do evangelicals. They make up bullshit and stick it in there. Like, how in the world could the threat of death be worth anything if they don't know what it is?
Absolutely right, David. I mean, this is the whole point. Everybody that interprets anything within the Bible, and you have to interpret, you have to infer things, because a lot of it is allegory and stories and this, that, and the other.
You're going to believe it.
No, absolutely right, absolutely right. But if you're going to have discussions with them as well, where I come from is I look at it and I can infer different things, and I don't need to look at what the church fathers said back in the 1st century, because if I was going to do that, I'd look at the Gnostic stuff and the heresy stuff as well. Right. I'd look at all of it. I wouldn't just look at what the Catholic universal stuff said for the church fathers, and that's the point.
If we're going to address a specific interpretation that somebody else makes about it, then Sidney's original statement applies to those people who make the assumption, who make this, like Sidney's version has an assumption in it, and it's an assumption that's common, or at least one that's semi-popular or popular enough to be worth addressing. So those
I
people's
agree.
those people's interpretations, it does apply.
I agree, Outbound. That where we were coming from was I said, right, let's look at that first premise and let's use the scientific method on it because science is implicit within that first premise. Let's try and kill that first premise because if we can't, then we have to accept it. But if we can kill it, then it can't be accepted. And that's where we were coming from. This isn't a case of saying stuff that we actually believe. It's trying to work out, is that, from a scientific basis, is that a true statement?
Are you talking about the...
Does that make sense?
Which statement are you talking about?
The
one that
first
says,
sentence.
The first sentence, right? Yeah.
So what was the
It's first
line
sentence,
of reasoning?
okay. Genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible.
And my reasoning, Outbound, is that it comes from the presupposition that Adam and Eve were the first from which all people came from.
That's exactly what we're addressing, though, is the narrative from people who are making that presupposition.
No, the presupposition is not an argument.
That's a good point, Sydney. That's a good point because I think that could be a key element of actually that presupposition.
I don't understand the contrary presupposition.
It's not contrary. It's just clarifying it. If somebody comes from the concept that Adam and Eve were the first humans from which everybody came, then genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Outbound?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So it's putting an if statement, the conditional bit, which prevents people from going down the rabbit trail that I've been taking, everybody.
Okay, here's what I've seen. Here's what I've witnessed in a lot of YouTube discussions and stuff is when somebody presents a more or less the same kind of thing that you just did, then in order to defend their faith, they have to attack the science of genetics, which I've seen people like Tommy Hall and empiricism try to do. True empiricism.
Tommy Hall. Explainer.
So they have an issue that now they got to disbelieve in science in order to believe the claim that they have in their Bible.
Not necessarily, right? There was a guy who was on here when I was in the wrong hangout who was saying that basically it's a miracle, right? That you're not going to see it in the evidence, right? It's going to look like there's not enough time for these mutations, but some events happen that God controlled that makes Adam and Eve true, and then what you're seeing just doesn't kind of correspond.
So basically, God's lying to us,
or our interpretation of evidence is wrong, type thing.
Then you're
look,
doing what some of the things I just did. You're making up stuff to fill in the holes.
If God knows everything, and He knows that you're going to misinterpret it, and He places that, situation. If He creates that situation anyways, I mean, He's pretty much lying to you. If a human did that, we'd say they're lying. But if God does it, He's not lying.
I'm just going. Yeah, I don't believe this Adam and Eve stuff, but I'm just going with what they can say. Right? It's not necessarily discredit the evidence. It can just be. They can just say the way we're interpreting it is ruling out the supernatural.
That's just a fancy way of saying that. Well, God's lying to you.
I believe what Heretic said is true. I mean, that's my personal belief. I believe the Heretic said is true is that they weren't the only people, that they were a special creation, and then later their line got intermingled with the others.
If you're making that presupposition, then this whole claim doesn't apply to you because this is basically aimed at people who are presupposing that Adam and Eve were the only original humans.
Yes, I understand that. I was just clarifying my position. Yeah, I don't buy that. It's ridiculous to me. That the claim that Adam and Eve were the only two human beings that existed at that particular time is absolutely ridiculous. Because there's so many things that don't make sense if that's true.
Mm-hmm. So that was a hangout just on the one sentence. I think that we have not concluded this conversation about the first sentence at all. We certainly didn't accomplish one of my goals. Well, the only goal actually and that would be of having somebody come in
to defend it.
To defend it. No, to attack it.
Somebody. We need somebody who actually makes that specific presupposition in their belief. Because
I want somebody to come in and be convinced that our presupposition, our side is correct, and then change the whole way of looking at the world, and step down or step up to reality. That's what I want to see.
You're an atheist evangelist, aren't you, mate?
I'm an atheist evangelist, yes.
Go, Sydney. I think even if you were to get that point across, they probably would just change their view from Adam and Eve being the only original ones to, okay, well, maybe there was more than just Adam.
Okay, but then at least it's winning. It's chopping away, chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. Love it.
I don't think they would. I've talked to especially more of the evangelical fundamentalist group. I've talked to a few of these people, and they just do not care that science, whatever science says, it has to be wrong. As far as they're concerned, the Bible has to be true, and everything else has to be wrong.
It can be can be whatever. But
the other sorry. Sorry, Sid. Sorry,
I'm just going to say it can be whatever it wants to be, but it doesn't get any special privilege.
I'm saying is you're not going to make any headway in their whatever. You're not going to make any headway with them. They're just going to be stubbornly cling to whatever the book says as they interpret it, and it's just going to be the way it is to them. That's just it.
I disagree with you. There's the headway.
Yeah, there's the other type. Hang on, Outbound. I need to go, so I'm just going to give 1 minute just here, and then I've got to go. There's the other type, which is Darwin's deity, who came in, who didn't want to address the question in the slightest. He just wanted to talk about the individual definitions of individual words that were in the premise to actually try to prevent the discussion from actually taking place.
He attacked science right from the very beginning. Science isn't even in that sentence, but he said because genetics is the sub-sentence of science, I'm going for science.
Right, I'm out of here, guys, because I've got some.
Thanks for your contribution, Harry. Good. Looking forward to seeing you again.
All right, yeah, man.
Cheers all. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
No, but Sydney, this kind of thing is very important actually, because looking back for me, I remember one of the first times I really remember where my religious belief hit reality was in 6th grade. And my 6th grade teacher said, I raised my hand, and she goes, how did different languages come about? And I gave the whole Tower of Babel story. It's, I just didn't know better, right? I just didn't. And she just matter-of-factly said, no, that's not how languages. And she kind of told me how languages, and it got me questioning things, right? I remember that to this day. I'm in my 30s now, right? So this kind of stuff, it matters, right?
So what kind of indoctrination were you suffering under at the time, if any?
No, I don't look at it as indoctrination, but my dad was a minister, right? And I used to go to church all the time.
Nice one.
I bet he's proud of you, huh?
But I don't. It wasn't a it's just all I knew, right? It's just all I don't even think it was like a vicious indoctrination. It's just that's all I knew, right? And then
fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and then when I got confronted with that, I guess that kind of leads you kind of down the pathway of, oh, okay, this stuff is not,
Well, we know that
I
languages
think
evolve and change over time. When, English, if you could build a time machine and go back, say, 500 or 600 years, you wouldn't be able to understand anybody.
well, I don't know if you wouldn't understand them completely, but it definitely would. There'd be a barrier.
Well, okay, wasn't the Middle English like 1000 AD, something like that? Yeah, you have to go back a little further.
Actually, no. Don't forget the William the Conqueror was 1066, right? So he was French. So you got to figure that for at least 200-300 years, the French kind of were the providers of the kings of England. So the predominant sort of language of the court, let's say, would be French at least for the first 300 years until ultimately some charter or some law or something was written in English as like a sign that the English nation, there is one.
Yeah, I don't know English history that well. Just little pieces here and there, but I did look up like how long ago the language was like almost completely different. You could barely. And I've heard people who knew how to speak those different versions of English, and I listened to some of the recordings, and it was like I can only make out like 3 or 4 words. It was like, wow, it sounded like a completely different language.
Well, let's face it. You go up to Glasgow, Scotland today, and listen to them speak English, and it'll sound like a completely different language there as well. You go down to Jamaica, listen to them speak English, you got the same problem. So, can you imagine going back 400, 500, 600, 1,000 years?
Yeah, because languages evolve. You even take a dictionary. You don't even do that. You just look at a dictionary, that does etymology. That tells you how the word, where the word came from. There's like words from Latin, France. There's some German words in there, and they just.
Well, it certainly shouldn't surprise you.
Yeah, well, that's how language evolves. I mean, it just. One day, boom, everyone spoke different languages. I find
it's a process of intercultural, cultural intermarriage and stuff.
I can see how someone would have an issue with
one culture conquers another culture and hangs around and intermixes, and sometimes you've got 2 warring parties on one side on a border. Remember, like in the Christians and the Muslims in the Middle East during the Crusades, and the border villages would be a little bit more sort of integrated than the 2 sides separately.
I personally don't have that much of an issue with the Tower of Babel. Like I say, I know that presently languages have evolved, at least since that particular time period, and so it's not really an issue, a point to me. It's not a make or break kind of deal. I mean, it's like maybe it happened, maybe it didn't, or maybe it happened in a way that's not described that well. But yeah, it's just not a major thing to me. It's an interesting point, but that's about it.
You talk about history in general?
I'm talking about how languages got divided, why they're different languages. It really doesn't matter that much to me.
As long as you can understand one of them.
What's that?
As long as you can understand one of them.
No, as long as there's a translator, or we can at least speak a common language that we both know.
Which is kind of what's happening right now.
Like say if my native language is French, and your native language is say Germany, but we both can speak English. Yeah.
Okay.
As long as there's some language that we can both speak and understand one another, or an interpreter, then I have no issue.
What have you got to say to somebody whose language you don't speak?
Then I guess you're stuck with gestures and whatever.
Yeah, no, but what would you like to say to somebody whose language what would you need an interpreter for?
Well, I mean, if you're having a conversation, if you're like, I don't know, it's something.
How do you get into a conversation with somebody who doesn't speak your language?
Well, I don't really know. I just made a point. It's just if you happen to be in a situation where you're in another land, and you need to say something or ask something. You're traveling.
All righty. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, it's no really not a spot. It's just a hypothetical, you know.
I spent some time on an evening in Germany with a Russian couple, and we didn't have a common language, so it was really difficult. It becomes very difficult to find one's words. They weren't able even to speak their own language. They didn't even, they hardly said anything in Russian. And of course we used our limbs, our hands, and I drew.
Yeah, you use gestures and stuff like that. And can you imagine what happened when the Spanish first arrived on the American continent, and nobody had ever spoken an Indian language, and it's like, can you imagine how they had to try to communicate? They had to point to things, learn what different things meant, and slowly, gradually, over a period of time, say several months at the very least, you start to pick up some of the words and the languages and stuff of these people, and vice versa. That's how it happens.
Maybe the first words are the names of objects that you can perceive. Yeah.
So to sort of summarize here, we're down to very few viewers, very few people in the room. What we covered today was the first sentence of the graphic, which is, genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. The intention, of course, was to have a room full of 10 people agreeing with with that statement. And now we didn't quite get there, but I think it's a strong enough statement to be able to table as a continuation for a future hangout and a future conversation. What do you gentlemen think?
Well, I missed most of the hangout because I was still sleeping from getting off work. But you had people that didn't agree with that statement?
That's right. We had.
I was under the impression that most everyone believed.
Well, specifically, we had you know, Darwin's deity.
Oh, I must have missed him.
Yeah. Well, you know who he is, right?
No, I think I've heard the name, but no, I don't think I've ever heard him.
Duncan Darwin or Duncan Dawkins or something.
Is he a Christian?
Yes.
He's what, an evangelical fundamentalist type?
Just, I don't know, Christian.
So he believed that the Bible is true and is absolutely true, and the part about the Adam and Eve story. You believe that's 100% fact? I
guess, yeah.
Well, he hasn't made any statement about this.
Okay. Yeah, I must have missed him, because I did go back and look at different parts of the earlier hangout until I got to the present one, so I can get a flow of what was going on.
Well, he's definitely a supernaturalist.
I don't know what that means.
It means that he has a knowledge that there is a continuation to some kind of a consciousness once your physical life has come to an end.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, well, it's apart from the statement that we were actually discussing today.
Okay, well, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't know how this conflicts with your dogma, but
it doesn't.
genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story to be impossible.
That sounds like an accurate statement to me.
Okay, great. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I 5, including me, in the Hangout, including 3 viewers. I hope everybody's at this point with me, and when we carry on next time, when somebody else comes into the room who would like to challenge it or accept it, we'll carry on from there. Anybody else have any final toodaloos to say?
No.
Well, I just wanted to clarify a little bit. My position is that there was an Adam and Eve. They just weren't the first ones.
Well, okay, fair enough. But what we are focusing on in this series of Hangouts is the first sentence regarding the genetics has proven that the Adam and Eve story to be impossible. Genetics has proven the Adam and Eve story to be impossible. Now, there's no argument there. We all agree. We have to agree in order for this, for us to move on. And people like Darwin's who come in and act like temperamental 5-year-olds are the ones that we need to have come in and say, okay, yeah, you're right. I don't know what I was saying, but you're right. You know what I mean?
The first sentence, let me clarify. So the first sentence, when you say that it's impossible, you mean that the entire story is impossible, or that like there couldn't have been Adam and Eve?
Read the sentence that you think that I'm referring to. It
says genetics has proven that the Adam and Eve story in Genesis to be impossible. I find that statement to be accurate, but a bit vague.
Hold on a minute. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I guess it does seem to contradict it. What I mean is that it seems to say that the entire story just could not be true. There's no part of it that could be true. That's what it seems to say.
Says genetic. I mean, you agree that genetics is something that would prove the Adam and Eve story impossible.
Well, yes.
Yeah, the Adam and Eve story, sure, but Adam and Eve themselves, no.
Some years ago, I was talking with somebody about this, and we tried to understand this fact, and it made no sense. Yeah, so we proved to ourselves, not to the world, that that moment in time has never existed. So the same as it is confirmed today, no matter how the history of nature and humanity has been, there has been no point in time when only 2 people existed anywhere.
Correct.
I would agree with that.
Great, so we can move forward, and hopefully next time you'll join us, David, because if you're with us, we can, see how, because you have a different viewpoint, which is really a positive thing to have in a group hangout. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. That's David. That's Julian. That's Michael. That's Outbound. And this is me.